On November 1st, 1661, Queen Marie-Thérèse, the shy, retiring Spanish wife of King Louis XIV of France, went into labor. As soon as the Queen's contractions began, her quiet palace rooms, in which she had been ceremonially confined for days, began to fill up with princesses, dukes, and countesses. The birth of a royal baby was considered so important that it needed witnesses. Queens often labored before great audiences of up to people, a factor that only increased their fear and misery during childbirth. In this case, the crush of courtiers was there to assure that a living baby was not substituted for a dead child, and that a royal baby girl was not switched for a desired boy. Outside the palace, a carnival-like atmosphere prevailed. Spanish actors and musicians danced a ballet beneath the royal windows, with harps but also guitars and castanets to remind Marie-Thérèse of her native land. It was hoped that these Spanish sounds diverted the poor queen, who kept crying out in her native language, "I don't want to give birth, I want to die." Her fears were not unfounded. Childbirth was a terrifying and deadly ordeal for women and their children in an era before modern medicine. Infection was common. 1 in 3 babies in France died before the age of 1. And Marie-Thérèse was under overwhelming pressure to give the king a living male heir, thus ensuring the Bourbon succession. After 12 hours of agony, the queen finally delivered a healthy boy, who was named Louis de France. Courtiers in the inner rooms signaled the baby's sex to those in outer chambers by hurling their hats up the air. Arms were crossed if the baby was a girl. King Louis XIV, the flamboyant Sun King, shouted out the window to his subjects packing the courtyard below, "The Queen has given birth to a boy." For many royal women, the pressure to provide an heir started as soon as the wedding celebrations ended. Catherine de' Medici. The 16th century French Queen Catherine de' Medici was so desperate to become pregnant, she sought out folk healers who told her to drink mare's urine and soak her source of life in a sack of cow manure mixed with ground stag's antlers. Once pregnant, expectant royal mothers were under constant scrutiny. Marie Antoinette. Perhaps no birth was more hotly anticipated than Queen Marie Antoinette's first baby in 1778. Although her mother, Empress Marie-Thérèse, had done away with public births in Austria, Marie Antoinette was unable to change the entrenched ways of Versailles. Early in the morning, on December 19th, the Queen rang a bell, signaling that her labor had begun. Versailles quickly descended into chaos as avid sightseers hurried in the direction of the Queen's apartments. Fraser writes in Marie Antoinette, "The Journey." The crowds were mainly confined to outer rooms such as the gallery, but in the general pandemonium, several got through to the inner rooms. Some royal onlookers were even discovered perched aloft in order to get a really good view. In all the excitement, the Queen herself was practically an afterthought. After 12 hours, Marie Antoinette delivered a small girl, named Marie-Thérèse, after her grandmother. Although the child was not the desired boy, the Queen's apartments became so raucous after the birth that Marie Antoinette had a seizure and fainted. The press of people, the heat and the lack of fresh air in the rooms, whose windows had been sealed up for months against the winter cold, was too much for her after her 12-hour labor. It took a few minutes before anyone even noticed the Queen was unconscious. Eventually, boards were ripped off the sealed windows, bringing a gust of fresh air, which revived the dazed Queen. For the next 18 days, Marie Antoinette was kept in bed. Since her baby was female, Marie Antoinette was able to spend more time with her. A son would have belonged more particularly to the state, she tenderly explained to her daughter. "You will be mine. You will have my care. You will share my happiness and lighten my sorrows." Catherine II of Russia. The future Catherine the Great of Russia would not have the consolation of her child to make up for her horrendous delivery. In 1754, Catherine found herself essentially locked up by the Russian Empress Elizabeth for weeks in 2 small rooms in the Summer Palace, isolated with no company. Immediately after Catherine delivered her son Paul on a small, hard mattress, Empress Elizabeth whisked the new heir away. Her husband Peter, the cruel, mentally ill heir to the Romanov throne, followed suit. The parched Catherine was left shivering on the floor for over 3 hours without water until the midwife returned. She was finally placed in her bed, but then left in the room for months on end. Unable to see her child, Catherine instead plotted her revenge. There were some occasional attempts, however misguided, to give expectant royal mothers a more soothing birthing experience. Margaret Beaufort, the formidable, resilient mother of Henry VII of England, had experienced a horrendous delivery at the tender age of 13, when on the run during the War of the Roses. According to Sarah Gristwood, author of Blood Sisters, this trauma had understandably scarred her both mentally and likely physically. She never had any more children. The origins of public royal births. For centuries, public royal births were a tradition grounded in both political necessity and cultural beliefs. In an era when monarchies were thought to rule by divine right, the birth of a royal heir was more than a personal family event. It was a critical state occasion that held profound implications for the continuity of the dynasty and the stability of the realm. To ensure the legitimacy of a newborn and maintain political stability, witnesses, ranging from nobles and midwives to members of the public, were often present during royal childbirth. This practice was rooted in the fear of deception, such as the possibility of switching the baby or presenting an impostor, particularly if there was skepticism about the pregnancy or concerns related to the gender of the baby. In societies where male heirs were particularly prized, confirming the birth of a male child was essential to secure succession and prevent any disputes over the throne. Beyond preventing fraud, the public nature of these births also served as a powerful symbol of transparency and stability. By allowing witnesses to observe the birth process, the royal family demonstrated their openness and trustworthiness, reinforcing their legitimacy and the public's confidence in their rule. Cultural and religious beliefs further supported these practices, emphasizing the importance of honesty and reinforcing the divine nature of royal authority. While such customs may seem unusual today, they highlight the historical importance placed on trust, transparency, and legitimacy in royal lineages. Modern birth practices may prioritize privacy and comfort, but the need for a supportive and trustworthy presence during childbirth is a timeless aspect of the human experience. Tradition has always played an important role in royal birth ceremonies, influencing every aspect from the setup of the birth room to the rituals that followed. By adhering to these traditions, royal families sought to reinforce their divine right to rule and the unbroken line of succession that was crucial to political stability. Rituals often included specific prayers, the presence of religious figures, and symbolic gestures designed to emphasize the divine nature of the royal family. Each component was meticulously crafted to connect the newborn to a long-standing legacy of rulers, ensuring that the royal lineage remained unbroken. Historically, royal births were not just private affairs, they were public spectacles meant to affirm the legitimacy and continuity of the monarchy.